It's every week I get a nice email from my dear friend Mike Cohn, and this email is no different than the rest. I love getting these because they're usually directly in line with exactly what I was thinking or something that's going on in my mind. So today I wanted to discuss with you user stories. And the question is, does every story or does every user story need to be small? I thought that was a good question. So Mike begins, he says, small user stories are essential for success with Agile. When it's time to bring stories into an iteration, I always want them to be small. I'm going to pause there. I agree. I feel like too often we take the lazy route and we just put user stories in that are way larger than we can consume in a sprint, thinking that, oh, we'll have an opportunity to break it down as the sprint progresses, or if we don't put the whole thing, the team's not going to get the whole context. But in actuality, I live by the creed of it either needs to be small or extra small to even be admitted into a sprint, because I feel like the smaller you make the stories, the easier it's going to be for the team to consume and the easier it's going to be for the organization to be successful. He goes on to say, but larger stories have their place as well, especially for something that you're not going to work on imminently. Suppose you've just begun work on a new product that will include a set of reports. Because this is a brand new product, there's nothing to be gained by writing a bunch of small user stories around each one of those reports at this time, especially since you don't even know all the reports that'll be needed. At this stage of the project, having one big reporting story rather than a bunch of little ones keeps the size of the backlog more manageable. You'll have one entry in your tool instead of 15 or 20, and that in turn is much easier to manage. Further, if you do write all the small user stories, one per report, it gives the impression that you've thought about everything and that you've included it all. Early in a project, that's probably not true. New reports will be identified, and some that are asked for initially may not even be necessary. Okay, let's pause there. I agree with this context also, meaning that if there's something you don't know, you should create a small story, and this might be where we differ. I create a large, or I shouldn't say a large, I create an epic, usually a small epic, that says, hey, this is something that we've considered that needs to be broken down. This way, everyone on the outside looking in knows that, hey, we're taking this into consideration and we know there's more to it, but we haven't taken the time to finalize exactly what needs to be done. Then when I put inside of the backlog in the iteration, that becomes the actual research. So it's almost like a spike, except for it's a time box spike. So I say, we're going to research this for an hour, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, or whatever the right amount of time might be. And by putting that spike inside of the story, inside of the iteration, what it does is it time boxes and allows the team to know exactly how much time I want them to spend on that, so that they can come back with information that'll allow me to progress additional stories in the future. So further, you don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that every story needs to be small from the beginning. They don't necessarily. Instead, plan for stories to shrink in size and grow in detail as you move closer to being brought into a sprint, and that's true. For most teams, this will happen during a backlog refinement meeting, one or two sprints before the iteration to be considered. Letting timing dictate your story size is one of the ways that you can be successful with user stories and with Agile in general, and I agree with that. I feel like sometimes we try to either get A, too much information up front, or B, we don't go by the rule of N+2. So for me, one of the big rules that I teach people when they're trying to decide how far out they should plan is N+2. Now, +2. So if you're trying to figure out how many sprints you should be planning ahead, now plus a high level for the next two. If you're trying to think out how many quarters you should do planning for your roadmap, N+2. N+2 seems to be a healthy way or a healthy formula that I've found that most organizations should be using, because it gives you a horizon, but it doesn't give you the 5-year plan. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a 5-year plan so you have some direction to run in, but I don't want you to live and die by the 5-year plan. If you can get that delicate balance that I'm discussing right now, that's going to be the key to successful Agile implementation. Thanks again, Mike, for sending these amazing emails, and that's going to do it for this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.